gonna remove the Loop it away, heart. So
there we go. Hey, how's everybody doing? Happy Sunday. It is so great to see all these folks on a holiday call. So this is always really great. Again, I guess happy Easter those who are celebrating. I know we've also got Passover. I think this is, I believe, the last day of Passover. Me and Donna Smith were trying to put that together. So also just, again, no matter what day it is, it's just so awesome to be with everyone and to build power with you. It's an honor, it's a privilege, and it is absolutely a pleasure. So my name is Hartzell. I am not Alan Minsky. I am but a poor substitute. But I am the National Outreach Director for Young Progressive Democrats of America. We've got some of our YPDA steering committee folks on here as well, Will and Kendall and Tyler. And so this was not supposed to be a YPDA centered show, but it kind of ended up that way, which I think is actually really, really exciting, and actually I think a great opportunity for us. As I said in that email, y'all, we're in a constitutional crisis. We have an administration that is just defying the will and the official rulings of the Supreme Court. You know, just throwing it away. You know, this is serious. We've got folks who are being deported for doing nothing other than just asking for a better life. And I know that everyone on this call, it's great to be in community with us because we get it, as Mike Fox always says, but also I know that there's a lot of power and there's a lot of strength on this call. So on this Easter Sunday, on this last day of Passover, on this just another Sunday, this is going to be a pump-up town hall. We're going to speak with some incredible folks. Like I said, didn't expect this to be a YPDA kind of show, but we are going to have a lot of young folks on here who are going to be telling you all the good work that they are doing, that we're doing. And so basically what you're going to get is a little bit of what we call in the media game, a man on the streets or a woman on the streets. So we're going to get the on the ground updates and word from our folks who are doing the damn things. We're going to speak with Lukas Ventouras. Lukas is a great guy. He is running for Congress in the New York 1, so the 1st District of New York. He's a young guy. He has graduated from NYU. He's now getting ready to finish up law school, and he's got a good chance to bring this home. So I'm excited for us to hear from Lukas. We haven't endorsed him or anything like that for YPDA, but he is so far good people. And I'm excited for y'all to hear from him. Also, we're going to hear from William Walter. He is on our YPDA steering committee as well, also the executive director over at our Wisconsin Revolution. The Fighting Oligarchy Tour, as we all have been captivated by and I think encouraged by, and also giving us a lot of questions to ask as well. We went to the Fighting Oligarchy speech in Wisconsin, the one at UW Parkway, one of the
Parkside.
And Parkside. I was close. I'm from Kansas City, so it's all long distance to me. And so we're at UW Parkside, this incredible rally. And what we also got a chance to do was set up a group of folks who are going to take that message and harness it, and how they're going to use it in their local communities, their cities, their states, building power to fight the oligarchy, not just on the national level, but actually in your neighborhood, in your backyard. So we're going to talk to Will and also Simon, who has an incredible name that I have to always make sure. Rosenberg-Larson. It's a long
Simon
one.
Rosenblum-Larson.
And I love it so much. We're going to hear from Simon. We're going to hear from Will. And we're going to have a blast on this Sunday town hall. So Alan sends his regards, but let's let him know that he missed a good one. Yeah? And so with that, let's go ahead and send it over to Donna. Donna Smith, how are you, my friend? Donna Smith, paging Donna Smith.
I am here. I am so sorry. I muted myself. Sometimes I think
there are people who would like to push that button for me, but hey. Hartzell, I don't think there's anything that most of the people on this call wouldn't see as hopeful and full of joy, but seeing you and Will and the rest of the YPDA folks taking a role today in a big way with PDA on a national stage. I am so pleased to see that in a big way. I also know for many of the people here, we've been working on Medicare for All for a long, long time. And this week is a big one of action for PDA and for folks who care about Medicare for All. And Susan Gilbert, my good buddy here in Colorado, is going to drop into the chat some of the things we can be doing. We can join an IoT call for healthcare. We can become a part of the issue organizing team is what IoT stands for. I'm sorry, there may be people here who haven't been around PDA and know the lingo that we've used over the years. There's also a letter to Congress. You can get to your congressional member if they're not already signed on the bill. That's extremely important, whether you are the person designated for your particular congressional district or not. Get that letter to your congressional member and become a part of this movement. It matters so, so very much. I'm going to do just a little bit of preaching, just a little, because it's Easter Sunday. And I don't talk much about my faith here. And I don't think and most of us even put that into play here, except where we put it into value in our souls, in our hearts, and in what we live every day of our lives. I can see nothing about what's going on with this current administration, absolutely nothing that speaks to the Jesus Christ that I learned about as a child and that I have believed in for a very long time. I see an abomination of my faith. However, that faith does not call me to be quiet. It doesn't call me to not get in there and throw those money changers out of the temple. Now, okay, that's as far as I need to go with Christianity at this point, except to say, oftentimes we are very quiet as progressives about what it means to have a faith. And I believe all progressives have a faith. We have a faith in each other. We have a faith in the common good. We have a faith in healthcare being a human right. We have a faith in a lot of things, whether we have a faith in an outside higher power or a God like I do, or Jehovah, or whoever it may be. We have a faith in one another's right to choose that path too in this life. And we must rise. This is the time it's not a time when we can sit still. It's not a time when we can't honor what our faith tells us to do. So today, all ye faithful progressives out there, we've got to stay together. We've got to listen to these young people. These young people, I'll just throw this back to Mike Fox in just a second. But I yesterday concluded another interview for Positively Progressive with two young people, a young woman, young man, one an engineer, one a dietitian, a registered dietitian, and listen to the impact this is having in their lives and their career choices, in the paths they're thinking about. That could be worrisome. But then what I also heard was this absolute spark that this will not stand the way it is. And their generation, your generation, Hartzell, your generation, Will, you are going to rip us back out of this. And we're going to be there to lift you. We love you, and I'm so glad you're here. Happy Easter to those who recognize. And I'm glad for those who practice the Jewish faith. I do not know how you wish someone the end of Passover, but I'm so sorry I don't. And Hartzell, you, my friend, give me faith in so many things, and thank you. And now I think Mike Fox takes it over.
Well, hold on. Before we send it to Mike Fox, just because the love is in this room, and I think that's so important in this moment that we are in. I'm reminded, as you say that, Donna Smith, I'm a musical guy. I do a lot of things. I wear a lot of hats. And my favorite musical is A Chorus Line. If anyone is familiar with a chorus line, it is because, and it's a very progressive show because it's just a show about us. We all bring our lived experience to the chorus line. We're all trying to make it to that big show. And so a line that I'm reminded by when you say that, Donna, is all I ever needed was the music and the mirror and the chance to dance for you. And I will make that work. And what you just said is that young folks, all of us, not just young folks, by the way, because we take our cues from our elders. You know, we get, again, it's just our turn now, and it's also still your turn. You know what I mean? Don't forget that.
Yeah.
And so what I always say, and that is all we ever needed is your time, a little bit of your treasure, and the chance to build power with you. So that is my chorus line progressive remix as we send it to Mike Fox. Mike Fox, what our PDA to-dos. My brother, take it away.
Okay, y'all have inspired me. Made me cry, quite frankly. That's right, I'm a crier. What's the number one to do always on this call? Revel in the fact that you're surrounded by people who get it. What are we getting here today? I love that my sister felt the need to express her religious commitment on this call. As an atheist, I show 100% solidarity with her in that. And I don't care what your creed, what your religion, what your lack thereof, it don't matter. In this room, everybody gets the hug. And I hope that we all take that with us when we leave this call today. It's what makes me so incredibly proud of being involved with everyone on this call. It's that inherent respect for human dignity. Done. If you're part of Team Human and even Team Four-Leggers on this call, Team Four-Leggers and just life. If you are for flourishing life, you're in the right spot here. And thank you for being here. And you have made me healthier. Thank you all. And so, bunch of to-dos. Get ready, because our number 2 to-do is take notes. I got a big fat list here that I'm going to come at you fast because we got to get to our guests, all right? All right, to-do number 1, take notes, take notes, take notes, okay? Grab a pen and a piece of paper right now. Here we go. To-do number 1, join an Earth Day event, okay? Our coalition partners are at alloutonearthday.com. It's going into the chat right now. Obviously, boom. Earth Day's coming up this week. So pile on, pile on, pile on. Number 2, Disabilities Issue Organizing Team. Big monthly call this Wednesday. I'm getting things are popping up at me in Zoom here. 1 second. Boom. There's the link to sign up this Wednesday, 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Pacific. Pile on with us. We have this incredible couple of guests who their core work is in helping the disabled in disasters, something I hadn't considered before until one of the executive committee members said, you know, there's this group that actually is focused on an issue. Imagine how challenging that moment is. A hurricane's coming and you can't get out of your bed, for God's sake. It's tough enough if you're able to flee. That's challenging enough. But what that moment must be like, they'll be discussing their work around the world on that issue. And we'll also, of course, be diving headlong into the expanded and improved Medicare for All bill that's coming up, because that's going to have a big effect on the disabilities community. All right, so that's Wednesday. Next big to-do is the May Day events. Sorry about this, gang. I multitask poorly. Boom, here it comes. Get ready. May Day across the country. You thought April 5th was something? You thought yesterday all of the 50501 stuff was something? This is going to be huge, okay? And it's especially going to be huge if you pile on it. Hit those links in the chat, because we have this huge coalition going on right now. And we have a very loving and friendly and supportive competition going on. Which organization can get the most people in the game? Okay, so not only is this incredibly important, it can also be kind of a game that way, and I'm real competitive. So if you'd be so kind, make sure that you use the links that end in PDA there. If you want to sign up, go to the main site. There's the map. Click on the link that's nearest you. Boom. You'll be ID'd as a PDA person showing up. If you don't see something in your area, post something. And there's the link to make that happen as well. If you have any questions about hosting an event on May Day, Mike Fox at pdamerica.org. Think big labor push along with We Are All Kimar. So let's absolutely pack these events. If there isn't one near you, make a small one, and I'll help you make sure we got PDA folks showing up to your event, okay? Lastly, on the twos, we've got a boatload more of them, but we'll get to those once we hit family time. But the last to-do that I want for the broad audience is phone bank, phone bank, phone bank, phone bank. You hear all that stuff going on? Well, we need a gazillion people on the phones making sure that our people are getting out to these events or hitting their Congress people with that letter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We got to have the phones on fire. So go to pdamerica.org/volunteer. I'll be tossing into the chat as well. And that's all the time related to-dos. The treasure related to-do, solidarity. Solidarity. What we're looking for is not a bunch of money. What we're looking for is a lot of participation. Commitment to each other by just tossing $1 in. $5 if you can do it. $100 if you can do it. Doesn't matter how much. Just bottom line, show the solidarity. Get in the game with either an hour or $1, or as our double dippers do, both. Okay. Thank you so much. You make me healthier, and we'll see where we're at on our goals at the top of the hour. Back to you, Hartzell.
Thank you, Mike Fox. Appreciate you, brother. And I believe, just for any of the staff who's on the call, if someone could help us with posting those links, that would be much appreciated. Alan didn't give me that sort of access, which may not be a bad idea, to be honest with you. So
before brother, we got you covered.
Appreciate you, Mike Fox. So before we get to our featured guest, and Will, if you get a chance to see Lukas, go ahead and send me a DM, please. Before we get to that, I just wanted to say a few things. First off, I wanted to thank our crew on the Young Progressive Democrats of America Steering Committee. You see a lot of myself, you see a lot of Will, but I also want to make sure that we give our love and our thanks to Kendall Avinia. Kendall, I'm not sure if you're on the call, and I know you're not feeling all that great, but if you are on the call, I just want to let you know we love you and we appreciate you. And she's a much needed voice and perspective. She does a lot of our social media. And again, she probably would not say all these things about herself. So that's why we make sure we say it for her, because she is amazing. And her partner, Tyler Rivera, who is our tech guy. He is our shoulder to cry on sometimes. He is an all-around incredible person. And so I want to make sure that I thank both of them. In fact, that craziness we had on the Zoom call about a month or so ago, one of the reasons why we're able to get a lot of that fixed and we're working on our YouTube is because of Tyler. So again, wanted to make sure I say thanks to our friends. And again, before we get to our speakers, I wanted just to say this real quick.
Hartzell, Kendall's there, by the way.
Kendall, you there?
Yeah.
Kendall.
Oh yeah, no, I'm here, just hanging on every word. Thanks for doing such a great job leading the meeting. I'm feeling a little under the weather, so I might not be as involved as I want to be today. But it's all in good hands with Hartzell, and thanks for the love and solidarity with you all.
All right, Kendall, I'm so sorry. And I know that you're probably drinking a bunch of tea and I shouldn't be doing this, but since you are on the call and I want to hear your voice a lot more, just your thoughts as we enter this moment, my friend. Give me not just a young person's perspective, but just a person's perspective. You are a wonderful woman who is smart as hell, and you are a person with your own lived experiences, and you bring that to the steering committee. Chicago is lucky to have you. So what are you thinking about in this moment that we are in?
Well, this moment that we're in is obviously extremely difficult, and I have had an interesting political journey being a freshman in college when Donald Trump was elected for the very first time, and just been able to watch everything play out over the short time I've been an adult here. but and it can be really hard to not get extremely discouraged and to wake up in fear about what's going to happen, and even to just keep up with everything that's happening in the news. And I think that one of the most important duties that we have as Americans is to stay as informed as we possibly can, because there's no way that we'll win the fight if we aren't entirely aware of what it is that we're even fighting for, fighting against, and who we're fighting alongside of. So meetings like this are so important, even if the only thing that comes out of a meeting like this is just knowledge that there are like-minded people who are keeping hope alive and wanting to use their skills and their passion to fight back. So showing up like this today and meetings like this, you all are doing exactly that. And it's what I think is needed, because the more alone we feel, the more hopeless we feel. So I'm grateful to you all for being here, and I'm hopeful.
Love it. And again, I know Donna Smith always says that she looks to the young people, but listen, we take our cues from the folks that got us here and the folks that are still here, still doing the work. And I know I don't want to speak for the steering committee, but you know, we are following in your legacy. So I want you all to know that. And before we get to Lukas, who I believe is now on the call, I did a great job stalling for time. Really proud of myself. Thank you so much. I want to say this first though. And I'm a Star Wars guy. I'm not sure if anyone knows that. I've got a lot of tattoos. I'm covered up here, but I've got sleeves, all that stuff. And they're all Star Wars because I'm a nerd, right? And there is a speech in a show called Andor, Star Wars. And it's by one of my favorite characters. He's kind of the moral center. He's the revolutionary North Star. This is the beginnings of the rebellion, taking on the Empire, right? And so what Nemec said, which kind of became the like heartbeat of the rebellion, he said this. He said, remember this, freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy, throughout the country. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea that they've already enlisted in this cause. Remember that the frontier of the rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. And remember this, the imperial need for control, the oligarchic need of control. That need for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks, it leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. Remember that and know this. The day will come when all these skirmishes and battles, these moments of defiance, will have flooded the banks of the empire's authority. And then there will be one too many of us. One single thing will break the siege. Remember this, try. Remember this, try. And so I got somebody who is trying his damnedest, and I am so excited for y'all to meet him. He is running for Congress. He's a candidate in New York's 1st Congressional District. His name is Lukas Ventouras. And Lukas, our brother, is a first-generation American. He is the product of some Greek immigrants. And I know this is a big day. Happy Easter, brother. I know we had to take you away from dinner. I am so sorry.
No worries, no worries. Thank you for having me.
His grandfather, Lambros, walked through Ellis Island in the 1950s as a refugee from the Greek Civil War. He's got a campaign that's focused on worker empowerment, ending corruption, and accessible public transportation. My brother Lukas brings fresh energy and a vision to build a brighter future for Long Island. So those curious what New York 1 is, it's Long Island. We are thrilled to welcome him to the PDA Town Hall. If I had a sounder, I put a big welcome and applause. So just know you're getting that virtually, brother. Welcome to the Town Hall.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate you guys taking the time out on Easter.
All right, brother. So let's not step on the lead. You got a lot of folks here who are like, "How old is this man? How old are you?" And tell me how old you are, but also tell me why this is so important to you. And I feel like this would be you at any age, but right now, at your age, you know that the time is now to get in the fight, at least on this side of the fight, which is running for office.
Right. So I'm 24. I will be 25 at the time of the election. So I'm constitutionally eligible for anyone worrying about that. But no, jokes aside, I'm doing this because I never really fancied myself as like a political candidate, I've always just been on the political junkie side of things, right? The historical nerd kind of thing, like, reading Wikipedia at like 3 in the morning, some election in like 1830. That was always me. So I love politics. I love the process. As a product of immigrants, I appreciate a lot of faults and everything what this country has to offer, like the kind of place this country can be when we're at our best. And so, I've always loved that sort of thing, but I never fancied myself like a politician. I always thought the politicians were kind of gross, self-interested. I still believe that, obviously, but I think I got to a point where I was fed up enough where I decided like I'm gonna try and do this. I know that I'm an honest person, right? I have everybody's best intention at heart because I'm a voter at the end of the day. Like I'm a young person. A lot of this stuff affects me, and I figured, you know what? I know for a fact that I'm gonna get in there. I'm gonna do the hard work, and we'll elaborate on what that hard work is, right? But I really thought like, okay, if no one else is gonna do it, like I'll step up. I've always been a go-getter type of person, and it sort of manifested itself in this.
So tell our folks on the call again, you're New York 1, so we're talking Long Island. What is the makeup? And hey, it's real, recognized real on this call. So,
Right.
let's just talk frankly, let's be blunt. What is the makeup? You're running. I love you. We're gonna do all we can, but like
Right.
you got a real shot at this or what?
Yeah, I think I do. I think it's definitely a seat that has been maybe cast aside by those in the party elite, the establishment types. But I wrote in this article recently where I basically said this is a winnable seat, but not in the way that we usually run campaigns, not in the way that Democrats usually run campaigns. And I can really only speak for New York Democrats, Long Island Democrats, a lot of great people. But I think that our focus is unfocused, right? We don't have our focus on the right things. We're not running the right type of campaigns. So this is absolutely a winnable election, definitely. As for the makeup, it's most of Suffolk County. I'm not sure if anyone on the call is. We probably have some Long Islanders maybe out here.
Bro, hey, let's assume nobody knows nothing.
Okay, so nobody knows, right? So
tell us about your folks, man.
Okay, so this is Suffolk County. This is mostly Suffolk County. And if you know anything about Suffolk County, I like to call it like a microcosm of the US. And I don't just say that because it's where I live and I like to gas it up, right? It really is. You have, rural areas. You have, to the extent that the suburbs can have like more urban areas, we have that, and we have, suburbs everywhere else. And you have, people like to think, oh, Long Island, everybody's rich. And like, there's a lot of wealth out in New York's first, but we have a third of people in Suffolk County live, below the poverty line. We have mostly 2/3 or another third of those people that are living paycheck to paycheck. You know what I mean? It's very much glossed over as this place of only elites and everything, but we really have everything. We have, like I said, rural working class, we have the more urban upper class, and we have everything. And so it really is a very diverse district. It's diverse ethnically, culturally, religiously, politically. Like it really is a 50-50 kind of place, but it's a 50-50 kind of place that Democrats have. I think they've just fallen a little bit behind in the modern game of politics and the modern kind of campaigns that we need to run. And so it has become this, oh, it's a Republican seat, right? It's a MAGA seat, which I hate that characterization because out here, if you talk to folks, yeah, they voted for Trump, whatever, but they would very easily vote for Democrat if they thought that, if they believed in the message, right? And sometimes the frustration is, well, how do you not believe our message? You know what I mean? Like what we offer is so much better than how could you possibly believe a Republican? And I totally understand that frustration. It's a question that all of us should ask ourselves. But at the end of the day, you know what? We need to sell, we need to sell our product better. We need to, need to have a product that's worth buying as well. You know what I mean? Something that people can believe in. And so all of these things considered, I've worked on campaigns out on Long Island. I've you know, I've been around, I've been involved. You know, I'm on a local Democratic committee, so you know, lots of candidates have passed through, like, you know, where I'm able to see them and talk to them and whatever. And like I said, mostly great people, like lots of great people. But I think that, you know, as a New York Democratic Party or Long Island Democratic Party, like we need to move forward. We need to progress in a sense and try a new kind of politics. I think we're just kind of stuck in the 90s a little bit, and that's before I was born. But you know, I've done enough research into that era to know that that sort of triangulation, neoliberal kind
Lucas,
of
let me
yeah.
ask you that real
Step
quick,
in.
because you know what? Because hey, I am also a baby of the '90s, just barely, and there's a lot of folks on this call who very much lived through it and had lived through a whole lot of decades before that, and we love
Yeah.
that's why we take their wisdom, right?
Right.
And so I think a lot of folks on our call have heard young people say that,
Sure.
and I think that it is sometimes gets misconstrued as young folks bashing folks
Right.
who are older,
Right.
but that's
Which
not
is
what
not
it
the case. No.
So
no,
yeah,
no.
can you? I really want, because I don't think enough people sit on this enough, because I think it is important. Because
Right.
well, what do you, when you say that, when you say stuck in the '90s, what does that mean to you, brother? What does that mean?
So what it means to me is it really has nothing to do with, and you know, you and I have spoken about this, so I know you agree with this, but it has nothing to do with the people. Like if you were, you know, you were 30 in 1992 and you know, you're like 63, something like that now, you know what I mean? You have moved with the times. You are in the year 2025. It's never, in my opinion, about the voters necessarily, but it's about the people who purport to represent these voters that are very much stuck in a bygone era where it's like, oh, you know, we're gonna link arms with each other and sing Kumbaya, and we all have the best interests for. But no, you know, my honest opinion is that we are fighting, and our opposition party, we're fighting people who genuinely want the worst for people in this country, and you can't work with those people. You really can't. And so, you know, this era, when I say, oh, this bygone era, yeah, you know what? You know, we've done enough studying to know a lot of people that came, a lot of these politicians, right, that came up in this post-Watergate era, these things like somehow, you know, a lot of them are still, you know, some of them are still in Congress, which is fine, you know, God bless them. But I think power tends to sort of saturate your way of thinking. And so when you're there for a certain amount, when you're there for, God, 60 years, something like that, 50 years, I just really think that you just lose touch with the outside, and the voters are the outside, so they move with the times. No one, you know, most of the voters aren't singing the same tune they sang 30 years ago. It's a different world, and the world that has changed includes those people more so than it includes any politician or lobbyist or whatever. You know what I mean? That is an upper echelon of people whose lives hardly ever change. They live in, you know, relative comfort, which is an understatement. You know what I mean? Like, but for the rest of us, you know, what went 30 years ago, like, you know, with like trade deals, for instance, right? That, you know, that's the beginning of NAFTA. You know, what the culture and what the air of, you know, politics was on the ground is very different now, because 30 years ago, we didn't have, you know, we still had the ramifications of bad trade deals, but now we have the bad ramification of, like, let's say that trade deal, right?
Well,
So
and also let me say this too, brother. Like our brothers and sisters who were living through those awful trade deals,
right.
we're living through that also. You and me are also a
Exactly.
product,
Right.
just as much as our folks who experienced it then are also still experiencing
Right.
that stuff now. Again, like there is so much more.
Right.
Like I hate that, you know, this isn't a young and old.
Mm-mm.
It is all of us saving democracy. Like that's the whole
Right.
point of it.
Yeah, I think that, you know, and I don't know if it's the media, I don't want to like point fingers, whatever, but I think for a lot of people, this idea of like, right, the gerontocracy and everything, like it's not an anti like older person thing. And most of the older folks that I've talked to have been like, I wouldn't fancy myself in that position at this age. A, because you see like a committee hearing and the person's like, how do you use the Facebook? And it's like, first of all, not all, many older people can use Facebook, but maybe that person in particular, right, is not in 2025, and they have a different mindset. So it's not an older person thing.
Well, you say that there are plenty of young folks who are our age who have an ideology of the 70s and the
Exactly.
80s and the
Exactly. And
90s. And those are folks who might be
exactly.
younger
So,
than both of us.
right. And yes, it's mostly people that are younger than us. It's, and that's an issue as well that we can get into. But, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not they're trying to divide us again by now it's the different classes like age, but it's young versus old. No, it's old mindset versus a new progressive type of mindset. You know what I mean? And that's it. So when we say, oh, this is a gerontocracy, yeah, it's a gerontocracy mindset wise. These people are 80 years ago, but they could be, I'm trying to think of some young, Republican congressmen that are in their like 30s, late 20s, whatever. These people are in 1920 mindset wise.
There's a lot.
You know what I mean?
Some young folks within the Democratic Party also. I mean, some of that also is a little bit self-interested because sometimes that's where the money is. But again, I just really like to stress that part, especially because I think a lot of folks will see your run as, just some young person doing a thing. Right. And that's not how you want to present this campaign, because that's not what it is. So I guess I'm curious, PDA, Medicare for all, getting corporate money out of elections, big money in general out of elections. What's some of your signature things? Not even maybe policy, but like, what is it that is a core to who you are? From universal healthcare to education to, you tell me.
I mean, many of those things are, healthcare for me is an extremely important issue. And I think that, we do need universal healthcare. We're the only major nation in the world without it. The only, industrialized nation, first world. I hate, that classification of nations, you know what I mean? But, in that, that tier of wealthy nations, we are the only ones without it. And we are constantly told that there's no way that a nation of our size, population wise, could possibly have it. But that's bunk. You know what I mean? That's BS. And so for me, healthcare, the fact that, people in Long Island, people that I've met, that they'll have to say, maybe their kid is diabetic, right? And they'll say, well, it's either my kid takes their insulin or I eat. And it's like, okay, I guess today my kid is going to take their insulin. I'm not going to eat. What kind of country are we that is even an option, that is even in the equation for parents or people to say, of older folks to say, is it my medication today or am I eating? Am I going to get, am I going to pay out of pocket for this procedure that I need, or am I just going to let it eat me from the inside? The fact that we are the richest nation in the history of the world, that no other nation in the history of the world could ever conceive of having the wealth and power that we possess, that we can't take care of our own people, it's a tragedy beyond tragedies. So for me, universal healthcare, right? Single payer, a lot of people still are afraid of the term universal healthcare. And I really, going into running, I was told, right, you shouldn't say this, you shouldn't run on it. And I'm like, but for me, that's the kind of politician I don't want to be. If I'm so calculated the moment I come out of the gate and I'm not saying how I really feel, then there's no point in doing this. Then I'm just like everybody else that I don't want to be like. So for me, of course, we need, call it single payer, call it whatever you Medicare for all, whatever makes you happy, call it that. But at the end of the day, everyone has healthcare as a human right. That's what I'm running for. That's what I'm running on. So that's a big one for me. I saw someone say transit options. That's very important for me as well. I mean, it, costs like $20 to go from Huntington, Northport, wherever, like from where I live, to go to the city, and that's just way too much. We don't have good options. We're a very car heavy society. Long Island is very car heavy. I think it's like only 6% of households in my county don't have a car. And so we're obviously a very suburban district in that regard, and rural district. But, that for me as well is not only, providing more options, more buses, but clean energy, high speed. I mean, they're killing high speed rail now in I think it was Houston to Dallas, in different places, across the country. Again, this goes back to we're the richest country in the history of the world, and infrastructure wise, we are in the 70s. This feels like in a lot of places in this country. You know what I mean? I have the privilege of I went to undergrad in New York City. And so for me, New York City really, because I've done enough traveling where I'm like, this really is one of the only places where you can conceivably get around solely on public transit without having to maybe Uber somewhere or, walk to, you know what I mean? Like it's really ridiculous. And Long Island's no different. We're, 80 miles, whatever it is from the city, but it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. It's like people but all these things sort of roll into each other. Then it's like you don't have transportation to make it to this maybe doctor's appointment, and then the doctor's appointment also costs a lot of money, and you have to Uber to the doctor's appointment, and it's further compounding like, things that you have to pay for and everything, and it's ridiculous. So, transportation, healthcare costs, just costs of living in general. If anyone knows anything about Long Island, people just know that that's a freaking expensive place to live. And it is. Housing is expensive for everyone in this country, but Long Island is an especially expensive place. I don't, I don't want to blow it out of proportion. Like it really is a very expensive place, in comparison to other suburban areas of like, the suburbs of Phoenix, or even like the suburbs of, LA is also very expensive. So they kind of go hand in hand. But you know what I mean? Like it's very, very expensive. Cost of living, groceries, gas, that we don't have more options for people to say, if I want to drive, if I need to drive, it should be an electric. You know what I mean? If they want an electric car now, Tesla and everything, I wouldn't, whatever, that's a whole other can of worms, right? But,
or maybe I don't want to drive at all. That's a
yeah, exactly. And that's something that, like I was talking about before, it shouldn't be that 6% of households only don't have cars. You know what I mean? And I assume that's people those are just the people that use the public transport, because we don't really have a lot of options. Our buses are very inefficient. They don't always come on time. They don't always necessarily come. You know what I mean? Like our train options are like we have the Long Island Railroad, but it's very inefficient. It's slow. It's old. There's always issues and, stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, maybe I don't want to have to drive at all. But also, if I do have to drive, the supermarket, everything's expensive, housing, everything's expensive. I think a lot of it is also like for me, I love Long Island. I would love to, raise a family out here. But for me right now, it's way too expensive for a person my age. There's also a sense of like, not a brain drain necessarily, but almost like a youth drain, you know what I mean? Where people are just saying, I have to move cross country to Idaho or something, where things are maybe more developing, like a city like that, more developing, Charlotte, one of these places where it's like I can get more bang for my buck. No, Long Island should be, as it's always been, a great place. This is one of the places where post World War II, all the baby boomers, like, the parents of the baby boomers moved out here, all these, Levitt towns and all these places. And those had their issues, of course, with redlining and everything. But if we're talking about like an ideal that we should live up to, it should be that kind of place where a family of any kind moves out here and is able to, have paid leave. Also, if you have a kid, you want to raise a family, that's also very important to me, that family, father and mother, or, mother and mother, father and father, whoever it is, that they both get paid time off. And not just, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. Because a baby, if you have a baby, you can't really, that's an emotional bonding that you should have that time to, and lots of other countries, right? I'm Greek, right? And so my father's from Greece. My whole family's from Greece. And I see how in Europe, childcare is taken, in Asia, childcare is taken with a much more genuinely maternalistic, paternalistic approach, So it's all of these things, and we can get into it. But like I said, paid leave, paid sick leave, paid medical leave, whatever it is, like we should be able to just like live. We can't live. We're stressed. We're overworked. We're over budgeted. We're over everything. You know what I mean? And I think we have to run more people who say, I see that, and I'm not going to try and like tinker around the edges for you. Like when we regain power, because we better retake this house. We don't retake the house, I don't know what the hell we're doing. You know what I mean? And like campaigns like mine, it has to be a part of that. You know what I mean? Like flipping seats where that was unexpected. I didn't see that coming. You know what I mean? Or, even if there's people on our side that are, inefficient, they're stuck in their ways, they're getting in the way. I'm voting for these Republican bills because I think I'm going to be rewarded for it by my constituents. No constituent is going to reward you for voting with, with these fascists, with Trump, right? So, for me, it's like we need to retake the House, and when we get power back, it can't just be people who are like, okay, well, maybe we'll pretend to fight for a public option or something, and then we'll drop it after 6 weeks because we have our token 2 or 3 senators and members of Congress who stand in the way. F that, you know what I mean? Like screw that. Like you got to go at them. You got to say like, I don't care if this is our side. Like people are like, oh, you can't fight. You can't, but fighting is how you get things done. I think, lying on your back and saying, well, I can say Manchin now because he's not, he's not there anymore. But oh, Joe Manchin is the reason why we couldn't get anything done. But he's one guy, and you're, 49 senators supposedly that want something to get done. Now, I think a lot of times they'll pick their boogeyman and say, "Oh, that's the sole person. That's the reason why we." It's more than that usually behind the scenes. But okay, behind the scenes, you have full knowledge, right? You're a member of Congress. You know fully who's really in the way, who's fight them. You know what I mean? Like, don't like be an asshole or whatever, you know what I mean? But like, fight them in a way that makes sense. Go to their district and say, I'll apply pressure to you publicly if private pressure isn't enough. You know what I mean? Like, we are not playing the same sport as Republicans anymore, let alone the same kind of game. You know what I mean? It's very sorry.
Oh, you're good, man. And because I want to make sure we get, because we're gonna get our next guest at the top of the hour, and this has been so great, man. Just hearing your perspective. Kendall, I believe you have a question before I have one, and then we'll see if we got any questions. But yeah, Kendall, what's your question?
I do. I also wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. It's excellent to get to speak with you. I think most people on this call absolutely share your values and your worldview and a lot of the policies that you're advocating for. And I think we all agree that they're extremely common sense, and that they're practical and that they're doable. And yet, even when the Democrats have had power in the past, these popular policies face really unbelievable obstacles, and end up really never making it to the point where they can be implemented. So I actually was very interested in your website. You spoke a lot about the problems of money in politics, the problems of the pipeline from Congress into becoming a lobbyist, the issues that have come from Citizen United. And I would just love if you could speak a little bit to how we can start implementing that as part of the Democratic message. There's no way to achieve these policies that we all agree are very doable and common sense when there are systems in place that prioritize special interests above the will of the people. So how do you think that we can incorporate that into a central Democratic message, that we're the party that wants to end political corruption, and we're the party that wants to get dark money out of politics? How do you, I guess, incorporate that, and how would you speak to other Democrats into how they should incorporate that into their campaigns?
Well, I think I really do think it kind of depends. I think if you're a Democrat that's been sort of swimming in this money your whole career, it's going to be a little bit hard to pry you from that mindset. But I think for a lot of maybe first-time candidates or candidates who, never necessarily took that money, but maybe didn't have the gumption to go out and make that part of their campaign slogan or that their theme, I'd just come out and say that it just is a winning issue. You know what I mean? Like, it's not something that is hidden. People see it, people understand it, that, tangibly, they feel it day to day, in their pocketbooks, that the root of this, a lot of it is money in politics. And so I would say to a lot of people, don't be afraid to come out and say that, and don't be afraid to even poke people on your own side and say, you know what, enough is enough with this, because nothing is going to change if you keep, this sort of sludge of money being funneled into your side, right? Nothing's really going to change. But I would say to a lot of, I think a lot of it is too, is recruiting candidates who, okay, we've had a congressman forever and he's just not getting off the pipeline of corporate money, whatever it is, right? You just got to recruit more people, and it can't be necessarily like, for me, running this campaign is very difficult because I'm not a wealthy person by any means, right? I'm still a student, in fact. So for me, I'm taking sort of a leap necessarily where I don't have the funds to self-finance. I'm relying on a lot of people who believe in the message to propel me. It's a very grassroots kind of momentum. That's really, I think, to answer your question, the only real way that we can have that be part of our message as a party is to get more people on a grassroots level to sort of recruit more candidates who, like, they mean business with regard to that. They're not gonna maybe like play footsie with the idea or half-ass it or say, oh, I'll talk about it, but then I still have like 3 super PACs behind me. I hope nobody looks at open secrets, right? No. Like, people, you have to recruit people that mean business. They're dogged, you know what I mean? Like, you can't get they're really like a dog with a bone on this issue. And for me, corruption is my main issue because it really is the end all be all for me. I mean, it's not going to fix all problems. A lot of, ideology sometimes goes into what's wrong with our politics, different ideologies. But I think money drives people into having a certain ideology mostly, which is whatever the special interests want. So I think for us, it's about recruiting a lot of people, and people who don't take the money already, convincing them that it's worth stepping out and doing this and talking about this. Because it really is a winning issue. I haven't met anyone, maybe besides a lobbyist, if I ever, if one ever crosses my path, who doesn't like this, who disagrees with it. Like, it really is a winning issue. It's as close to 100% approval as you can get on an issue. And that's just if you need to convince someone that it's worth talking about. I think all of us just see the worth in talking about it regardless, though.
I totally agree. Thank you for your answer.
Of course. Thank you.
Great question, Kendall. Last question for Lucas. And again, we've got Mike Fox at the top of the hour. Then will be introducing us to his coalition in Wisconsin. Simon's going to be on the call. But last question for you, Lucas. What have you, on a practical level, people want to, I've got questions saying, how can they help? Can you just tell people, like, on a day-to-day basis, like, what does a campaign look like for you? You're a young person, but also this is just a campaign. What does that actually look like? And then my last question for you is just New York. What exactly, like in this New York one, those specific issues, anything that's going to be, think, top of mind come election day for you? The floor is yours.
So I would say day to day, and how people can help me is really day to day. If anyone really knows campaigns, they know call time, right? It's the infamous call time. You got to really sit there and just go through, call people, ask for money, raise money, try and talk to them, get them on your side to understand. And then a lot of, now that we're getting deeper into the season, it's, going out, meeting people, going to protests, for instance. I've been going to a lot of the individual protests, meeting people, getting them on my side. I did a town hall recently at a Baptist church, going to different events. I'm going out to there's a Native American reservation out on Long Island, out in Southampton, the Shinnecock Nation. I'm going to talk to some of their leaders, and it's like stuff like that, especially when you want to run it in a grassroots way like I'm doing. It's a lot of just like on the ground, gritty, trying to get through to people, trying to talk to people, trying to, convince them like this is the message, this is the right way to go. Because a lot of people are cynical, I think, as they should be. A lot of people are, just wary of any politician, political thing. Again, totally understandable. So it's a lot of just, I mean, really, it is also when you're running a grassroots campaign, like, I'm not going to hide the fact that you got to raise money. You know what I mean? Like, people like me, they can contribute. That's the best way that you can help me right now, so that I am able to, print more palm cards. I'm able to print, build on my team, you know what I mean? Have I have people on staff already, but then I'm able to hire more people who are able to go out and like campaign on my back. So it's like really just building an operation. And so, yeah, I mean, that's really the day to day, and, just raising money. That's the unfortunate thing. I hate doing it. I hate asking people for money. But again, if you want to fight corporate interests and big money, you have to have a swell of grassroots financial support as well, and people who, believe in you, and you need to earn those people's trust. You know what I mean? You can't just say, give me money because I want Medicare for all. I'm like, no, people need to believe that you're really going to fight for it, which I totally understand. And that's part of the mission as well, is convincing people that, I mean business, I'm the real deal. You know what I mean? And part of doing that is to answer your second question, some of these issues is, like I said, New York's first is really, out of all the New York districts, because there's a lot of obviously New York City districts and rural districts, like, it really is the most all-American district in New York, I think, in my opinion. You really do have everything, every kind of person. And so the issues that touch on every kind of person are really just cost of living, groceries, cost of healthcare, the education. There's a lot of redlining on Long Island. So there's a lot of disparity in who gets what kind of education. It often depends on what you look like, where you live, you know what I mean? And bridging that gap, making sure that everyone has the same kind of education, because there's lots of rich districts and lots of poor districts on Long Island. And you can go 5 minutes from one of the best, IB accredited AP school, and you can go to a school that's like, they're using textbooks from like the 90s. You know what I mean? So there's a huge disparity. And a lot of it is just like all of the states, it's just a wealth disparity, right? It's just like a class disparity. It's like too much is hoarded by too few at the top, and it's never trickled down. You know what I mean? Quote unquote. So That's a lot of it too, is the issues of just like cost of living and making sure that there's more equity. Their wages are on par with inflation. You know, wages haven't increased barely at all in this country, you know, and things like that. Just making sure there's more money in people's pockets and that they're fed, happy, healthy, and able to just like live a just life. And I think any issue that centers on that is something that I'm going to fight for, and it's worth fighting for.
My brother, I appreciate you. I'm going to
Appreciate you.
Right now, I'm going to copy the website in. All right, look at that, with 5 minutes to spare. So I'm going to post this website link. And if you have a little bit of time, we're going to have our next guest come in here at top of the hour. But if you got a little bit of time, we're going to take questions at the end. If you can stick on, does that sound good?
Yeah, of course. I'll be here.
Lukas Ventouras, my brother, I'm proud of you. Keep doing this. And I told you,
thank you guys.
You're stuck with me now, so you're just a homie now. You know that.
There's worse problems to have, trust me. So I appreciate it.
My guy. Mike Fox, back to you before we get to William Walter and Simon with some fighting oligarchy news. Mike Fox, back to you.
Cool. Can you hear me?
You sound lovely, brother.
All right. We're cooking with gas. All right, everyone. Number one, we need to get not only the website in there, but likewise, if you're comfortable with it, Lucas, since we had a lot of people with raised hands, we're going to take everybody at the very end. Some may have to drop off. If there's an email that they can contact you directly, if for some reason we don't get a question answered, that would rock. Can you make that happen?
Yeah, definitely. Of course. Good
man. Excellent.
Thank you.
All right. Speaking of thank yous, my favorite job of the week, and that is the thank yous. And here they come. I want to thank the following people who have donated on this call. We have Joseph and Patricia and Bob out in Missouri, our chapter head Missouri, and phone banker Betsy double dipping, and phone banker Beverly double dipping, and Michael and Joanne and Jan and Neil and phone banker Jane double dipping, and Susan and Dr. Deutsch double dipping. Dr. Deutsch every week, every meeting. Thank you, Dr. Deutsch. Same with Dr. Sonnenborn double dipping. Thank you, sir. Patricia, special shout out, our largest donation of the day, $250, more than kind. Our goal, gang, is to match Patricia as a crew. Can we match that $250? I'm sure that we can. And thank you, Richard and Nadine and Debbie, phone banker Mary, double dipping, and Becky and phone banker Michael and Dorothy, as always. Thank you, Dorothy, for your more than kind 100. And phone banker Michael and Jason, who's always with us. Thank you, Jason. And phone banker Michael, Michael in Colorado, Michael, double dipping, and Melissa. All those folks donated now. Like I said at the top of the call, our goal here is solidarity. All of us in this together, working together as a force. We need anybody who has not yet donated or has not yet volunteered 1 hour. That's all that we're looking for. Hitting the phones, making sure our people are active, okay? Toss in, when I toss into the chat here, the links to either donate or to volunteer. Our goal is solidarity. We have 271 folks right now. That would mean 270 donations and or volunteer shifts, okay? So I'm going to toss those into the chat. We'll discuss that more when we hit family time after our speakers, and let's see if we can rock this thing, okay? Back to you, Hartzell.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brother Mike. And again, sorry, we did a little bit out of order with some speakers and their time and with the holidays. So we're definitely going to get to those questions, though. Don't you worry. At the end of our next speaker. And with that, I want to bring on William Walter. He is the executive director at our Wisconsin Revolution, also on our steering committee for Young Progressive Democrats of America. Will, go ahead and turn your camera on and introduce us to the folks and kind of give us a rundown on how you all are taking Bernie's message, Bernie AOC, the progressives, as we fight oligarchy, that tour. How are you making a national tour and bringing it home in your state of Wisconsin? So, Brother Will, you're up, my friend.
Thank you, Hartzell. As many of you know, as we covered earlier this month, Wisconsin had a very important Supreme Court race. On April 1st, the election went very well. We won by 10 points, but that's because of all the organizing that so many of the fabulous progressives in the state of Wisconsin have been building for years and years and years. And that kind of momentum has moved now into its next step as we try to harness this progressive energy and relaunch Wisconsin as one of the most forward-thinking states in the country. We have a very rich history of progressivism in the state, and we're very fortunate to have fabulous organizers that are stepping up to take care of that work. As good as they are from an organizing perspective, these two human beings are even better people. They're personal friends of mine, and I am very, very excited to introduce Simon Rosenblum-Larson, who is the Wisconsin organizer for the Friends of Bernie Sanders. He has spent 7 years organizing unions, first as a minor league baseball player, helping to build the first ever players union in the minor leagues, then as an organizer with SEIU Wisconsin, and finally in the organizing department for the AFL-CIO's Solidarity Center, focused on large-scale organizing projects in Southeast Asia. Simon will be here to discuss the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition that he has taken the lead for in Wisconsin that OWR is assisting with. And he will also be joined by Eric Wilson, who is a progressive congressional candidate from Wisconsin's 3rd Congressional District and currently serves as the Deputy Director of OWR. Simon and Eric, thank you so much for being here today, and I would like to give you two gentlemen the floor.
Thanks, Will. Sure, I'll start here. Nice to see you all. Nice to meet you all. I'm Simon. William, thanks for the intro. So our work in Wisconsin is kind of on two different tracks, at least from the Bernie side of things. The Bernie Fighting Oligarchy Tour has also included organizers all over the country targeting districts that are vulnerable, that are flippable. And you may have noticed there's like a, kind of a funky pattern of where Bernie goes and why. He's going to red districts, and he's going to red districts because those are vulnerable districts where Republicans, particularly these like small margin Republicans, can be hammered. And we're hammering those Republicans on particular issues that are unpopular with their voters. In Wisconsin, we have two of those districts. It's Congressional District 1, which is Kenosha, Racine, sort of southeastern Wisconsin. That's Brian Stiles' district. And then southwest Wisconsin, or western Wisconsin, but, goes southwest all the way up to, central, a little bit north. And that's Derek Van Orden's district. And Van Orden was one of the closest congressional races. That's the district which Eric ran in, and Eric can talk more about some of the organizing in CD3. But those are two districts where we have vulnerable legislators. They're, not talking to their constituents. They're terrified of showing up for town halls. And we're putting pressure on in those districts. The goal with the specific goal of that organizing is to win on the budget, to stop these representatives from voting on budgets that are going to cut Medicaid. They're going to attack SNAP. That are going to go after your Medicare. That's going to go after Social Security. Things that are going to break our support system for the neediest people in this entire country, and really the backbone of like working class support from the American government. Now, Elon Musk has already smashed Social Security by cutting massive numbers of staff and all of that. But if we hold the line on the budget, right, that's one victory that we can point to that says we beat Trump. We've already beaten Musk once in Wisconsin, and we're not afraid to do it again. I think that's one of the main focal points of our organizing. Now, the second part of the organizing is a lot bigger than just the budget. It's a lot bigger than just CD1 and CD3, and it's kind of the more what I want to be the focal point of the conversation today. The thing that's making all this organizing possible is a network that's being created around the state that we're calling right now the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition. It's coming out of this idea that economic justice and the economic bread and butter issues that are 90% issues across the country are what should form the backbone of progressive politics for the future. And the voice of the working class needs to be the center of that politics. And so the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition is coming together around an economic justice bill of rights that was introduced by some really powerful progressive legislators in Wisconsin's state legislature, including the Socialist Caucus of our legislature, which is the first many people may know, but Wisconsin was the home to this incredible socialist movement. In the 20th century, we had Milwaukee with socialist mayors and a deep socialist history called the Sewer Socialists. Anyway, so the Socialist Caucus, amongst other representatives, introduced this Economic Justice Bill of Rights that outlines 10 points that we're organizing like hell to try to make sure that progressive groups around Wisconsin can come together at a table and organize events, organize marches, organize protests, and have wield real political power as a united front instead of as a bunch of disparate groups. And frankly, in Wisconsin, there are so many incredible organizers all over the state that have built indivisible chapters, that have, they've built grassroots chapters, they've built organizations in their communities, and there's no body that's been uniting these across the state. And the hope is that under the umbrella of this fighting oligarchy message that's capturing the country and capturing the attention of particularly young people across the country, we can harness this energy and build that coalition in Wisconsin. In my work for Bernie Sanders, we had a call 2 days ago. It was a webinar. We had like 700 people on that call, ready to take actions. We funneled people into a few different actions: town halls in these important districts across the state, marches. We have a May Day march in Milwaukee, and then a May 2nd march in Madison. The Fighting Oligarchy tour, or the Bernie Sanders team, we're going to be hosting events in La Crosse and Kenosha in early May. These are both hubs of these 2 congressional districts. And really the goal here is to just hammer these bad acting representatives for not listening to their constituents. Beyond that, we're going to be doing a canvassing effort. And this canvassing effort it's not like your traditional sort of get out the vote canvassing effort. We're not targeting Democratic voters. We're actually going to be targeting Republican and independent voters. And we're doing that in part because, we feel right now that this message is resonating way beyond the Democratic base. The message of I'm being abandoned by government that's serving the billionaire class is a much more powerful message in communities like Congressional District 3 and Congressional District 1 that are like razor thin margins for Republicans. They're not super like jazzed up about all this, fascist BS that we're seeing from the government. But more importantly, they're feeling the hit of like economic pain that's been caused not just by the Trump agenda, but frankly by an economy that's been mishandled for decades and decades and decades, since maybe the Reagan era, where working people have not been put at the forefront of our politics. So we're going to be pushing a Republican and independent canvas. We have petitions around the state on this budget effort. We're going to be building in Madison and Milwaukee in particular actions targeting the bad actors, the wealthiest 1% monopolists in those cities. In Milwaukee, there's going to be a anti-union busting rally in early May that we're going to throw some support behind. So beyond that, there's going to be a comms effort here. We're going to get stories and testimonials from folks who want to tell their story in Wisconsin. We're going to press releases and letter deliveries around this petition against the budget. We're going to really try to put as much pressure as we can from the bottom up. That's the goal here. But the coalition at large, it's not a effort that's going to be time delineated by a budget fight. It's going to be something that extends well beyond whatever the next 3 months or 6 months brings from this administration. The hope is to build like this wave of progressive left-wing power that represents the working class and the working class voices in the state. And I really do think the momentum is building and the pressure is building in Wisconsin for Democrats, sort of the middle of the road Democrats, to either give up their like neoliberal dream or just walk away, right? Get out of office and open the door for somebody who's willing to fight for the working class. And for Republicans, God, I mean, we're going to have to make them answer to say, we don't want to raise the minimum wage. We don't want everyone to have healthcare. We don't want to have, a society that works for working people. We want to keep things the status quo. We want to enrich the billionaires. That's the sort of yes or no question that we're going to force Republicans and the sort of neoliberal free market Democrats that are refusing to move on this. We're going to make them answer that question. So Eric, I'll pass it to you. Thanks for having me, everybody. It's great to be in this community.
But before we jump to Eric, Simon, I'd like to ask one follow-up from you, because I think it's brilliant that you're approaching this almost nonpartisan. The issue is rich people, the billionaire class, are taking advantage of your community, exploiting working class folks all across the country. And we're going to go to your community and ask your Republican representatives whether or not they are willing to answer questions from their constituents. When they don't, we will provide a platform to do so. You and I were at an event yesterday together in southeastern Wisconsin, in the famous, a little bit north of the famous WOW counties. For those who aren't familiar, those are some of the most conservative counties in the country. We had about 500 people show up to a town hall that was set up with Senator Ron Johnson, who did not attend, where about 50 individuals came up and spoke on issues that they are seeing in their personal lives, impacting their friends, their family, their community. Are you seeing the same kind of energy, not just from, you mentioned stereotypical Democrats, the more centrist or moderate liberal type individuals? Do you think there is a path forward, not just with bringing more establishment Democrats into the fold, but as you are canvassing with conservatives and independents, because you are building your message around your officials aren't listening to you, how can we take that next step outside of just canvassing or holding events?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is an experimental canvas, so I can't give you an answer to say yes or no. This is the energy that we're seeing from Republican voters or independent voters right now. I will say that we've done a couple of these, the Bernie team internally in other districts around the country, and we're getting much more positive reception around the Bernie issues, in particular, the things that Bernie is calling out in his rallies, the oligarchs, the billionaires, the 1%, enriching themselves off the backs of the programs that help working people. That message is popular across the board. Now, in Wisconsin, I can't tell you because I haven't done those doors yet. We haven't gotten the canvassing effort up and running. But what I do expect and what I do understand is that we've had Republicans sign a petition to save Medicaid and Social Security, right? Like we're not seeing this as an issue that we put out this petition, we collected party information, we've had Republicans sign. It's not been a majority of people, but it has been some Republicans. We've had testimonials come out. I mean, I just think to a factory worker who was just terrified because his factory is basically shutting down right now because they're not sure the economic climate. The folks at the top, the CEO class, has said we're not going to invest in this factory in Wisconsin because we're scared of the economic environment, the economic uncertainty that this environment has created, and so we don't have any orders for you. So you're going to be furloughed for a while. This is a person who voted for Trump, and they're reckoning with this fact like day by day. They're a union member. They've been involved in their union. They've been sort of pretty militant against the boss for a long time, but they voted for Trump. And so these are like, it's a one-story sample, and I can't give you a broad strokes answer to this until we do some more digging on the doors. But my sense, my gut, is that working people, whether they're Republicans, whether they're Democrats, whether they're independents, feel abandoned. And they felt abandoned, frankly, for the last 4 years before this, too. And so, I think the question is, what's wrong? What's the hole that's at the center of our politics that's missing? And frankly, it's the voice of working people. And that's
see,
the thing
Simon,
that we're trying to fill. Yep.
You answered my question, and that was kind of the point that I wanted to get to is Wisconsin could serve as a litmus test for a strategy that could be implemented across the country. And this is an action that I don't think we're seeing from the Democratic Party at the national level. So as he did in 2016, Bernie Sanders, those of you, longtime PDAers are well aware of the role that our organization played in getting Bernie to run, recognize that he is taking the lead. And if this is successful in Wisconsin, we can duplicate this strategy all across the country, hinging on this same economic message where we can unite voters around against a common cause, which is that the billionaires are destroying our social safety nets. They're destroying the protection that we have set in place for workers for damn near a century at this point. And if we can keep organizing around those shared values, I think the sky is the limit, and the individuals that we can bring into the fold would be immense. So thanks, Simon. I'm going to jump to Eric to discuss the 3rd Congressional District specifically. Eric, obviously, you were a candidate in the 3rd CD. It was one of the closest congressional races in the country, and Derek Van Orden is uniquely unpopular. What do you think do you think this approach has validity in the 3rd and then across the rest of Wisconsin? Do you think we're going to be able to convince some of these conservative voters that this is the best strategy forward? Perhaps they simply aren't aware or aren't prepared for a more progressive Democratic Party. If we bring forth this uniting progressive message, do we have an opportunity to really flip some of these voters' minds?
Yeah, I think we do. So thanks again for having me on. And yeah, like William said, I ran for the 3rd Congressional District last cycle. We had a Democratic primary, and one fun part of Wisconsin is our primary is in August. So we turned from August right into the general. I did lose the primary, and as a young person, it is difficult, like Lukas said. The other component is I was up against essentially a professional fundraiser, and so I was outspent 10-1 in my race. But what we were able to build is really a movement around the issues. So I live up in Eau Claire, which is in western Wisconsin, about an hour and a half east of Minneapolis. And we had a major hospital close. So it was thousands of jobs that we lost. And they said, well, we aren't making enough money. They closed it up. And then a year later, they announced that they're having, I think it's $170 million campus that they are rebuilding over in Appleton. And in Green Bay. And so one of my major issues was healthcare. I mean, healthcare and housing is really my background, and it's if we don't have our health, if we don't have a place to live, it's pretty hard to do anything else. And I think we are continuing to see that pressure as, I mean, we don't have the systems in place throughout the district, I guess, and throughout Wisconsin, where it's easily accessible to the necessities that people need. And the jobs are going away. And so I think it truly is, if we start talking about these issues and have a solution and present something that we are actually fighting for, that was a huge differentiator in the race for me, is like, this is what I stand for and this is what I'm fighting for, instead of I'm just against the other person. And I think that's something that we're starting to see. We're seeing, obviously, Wisconsin is organizing. We are always in election season, it feels like, in Wisconsin.
Every election is the most important election. Of
Yeah,
your life,
every election is the most important election that you've ever had.
At least
And
until the next one, which then becomes the most important.
We laugh about it because it's a saying that is said every single year. But it really is, right? Like, if we wouldn't have won the Supreme Court, we would be screwed, essentially. And I think that's the battle that we're constantly in. And so one thing that I see and what we're building with the Fighting Oligarchy coalition is also the tech channels. So we're building kind of the database and the hub to be able to, hey, these are the organizations that are fighting for healthcare. They have an event. How can the coalition support them? And so we're building the network that I think is not necessarily present throughout the state to be able to communicate effectively and communicate quickly. And so we have something we're fighting for, and then giving the resources and the energy behind it. I think it's also, so as a candidate, I'm not running this cycle, but part of what I also did is I supported the person that is running now. And so we need to look at this as, I may not run the whole marathon, but if I can run a few miles and build that progress, get us forward, hand it off to the next person, and continue to push, we are collectively moving forward. And I think one thing that I learned, because my background was not politics, is there's a lot of people that are like, I'm running and then I'm keeping everything that I learned to myself. I'm keeping all my contacts and keeping, like, it's mine for my personal gain. And I think we as a progressive movement need to be like, let's continue pushing things forward and kicking the ball down the field.
That's a great analogy, Eric. I think of it like climbing a mountain. Like maybe the Simpsons episode where Homer falls asleep and the Sherpa dragged him halfway up the mountain and he feels like he's halfway there already. There are so many great organizers who have done this work before us. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. We can duplicate the successes of the past, but at the same time, we all have these victories and these personal relationships that we have spent years developing. And I think that's what's so unique about the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition is it's not about this entity taking credit. It's about collectively advancing all of the work we are doing individually and amplifying it to all of our corresponding circles, friends, contacts, neighbors, communities, so that we can get more and more bodies into this fight. And I think that if we're not able to take advantage of this unique moment where we do have people from all angles of the political spectrum that are very frustrated, that are finally starting to recognize that America's economy is not built to benefit them, what singular issue can we use to mobilize these people? I think Simon touched on it very well, that working class solidarity is not going to be built unless we're able to put this economic message forward. And I'm so grateful that Bernie is taking the opportunity to do so, because sometimes you need that single organizing force that I hate to say a Messiah-like character, especially because it's Easter, but you sometimes need a uniting force to bring all of these individuals around to work around them. And having Senator Sanders and his message from 2016, which is what initially got me involved in electoral politics, as the launching point has been invaluable for me personally and for the Oligarchy Coalition. So I'd like to go to Simon and Eric then as well. If the two of you could kind of speak to how many organizations have gotten involved so far? How many are expressing interest? Is this something that is popular amongst the progressive left? And do you think that as this coalition begins to grow and as more and more organizations begin to come into the fold, do you think we're going to have the kind of large-scale movement that has enough power outside of the Democratic Party to be the vehicle for progressive change?
I'll answer first. Short answer is not yet. The longer answer is I think no progressive organization that we talk to about this is like, yeah, these are all bad. Like, I'm not on board with this. This is not the thing I want to. They're all like, yes, 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 yes. I'm not going to sign this coalition letter yet. And that's, I mean, the fact is that's a good place to be. That's a good place to be in part because we have the opportunity to then work with those groups to organize actions. We're going to have fighting oligarchy actions all over the state in the next 2 months. We're going to have
you are building that trust through solidarity actions.
Exactly. Literally every corner of the state is going to have a fighting oligarchy event, and we're going to use those events to form sort of coalition tables in all these places and talk through what it means to build this political movement. This is not like Rome wasn't built in a day. Like, I've been on union organizing campaigns that have lasted 5 years to get to a contract or 10 years to get to a contract. I spent 4 years of my life as a minor league baseball player organizing underground for 3.5 of those years and then getting fired as soon as we went public. Like, that's what happens when you organize. You build slowly, you build powerfully, and then you come out with force. You don't come out in some like 50-50 kind of way. So at the end of the day, I think the answer is not yet, but we are really hopeful and we kind of believe in the mission and we believe in the values. And what I will say is everybody's been responsive to the message that the enemy is bigger than our differences. I say that in meetings, I say that in conversations. The enemy is bigger than our differences, but at the end of the day, we need a message that takes us beyond just the enemy. It takes us to what makes us us and what makes our movement our movement. And so that's what the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition is trying to do. It's not just trying to say we're an anti-Trump resistance force. No, we're a pro-worker resistance force. And so that makes it like that's harder than building a resistance coalition. And we know that, and I think that's part of the reason that this organizing is going to take longer, and it should.
But I think that too has long-term staying power because you're organizing around a belief in a better tomorrow, a hope of what can be, rather than arguing against what current problem we are facing now. Because most problems, they're not going to be around forever. Donald Trump is not a young man. But the issue of labor being exploited by their employers, that is an issue that has been around forever. That is something that we can organize around. That is something we can demand better for going as we go forward. Eric, what are your thoughts and with the organizations that you have spoken with?
Yeah, like Simon, there's a lot of interest. I think it's also one of the great things that I've seen is connecting across the state. And so, I mean, in the northern part of the state, it is harder to organize. It's just we're more spread out. There's different challenges, but there are a lot of organizations that are joining and wanting to be on board, and seeing the value in it, seeing the value in fighting for something instead of just against something. I think also what we're working on from a technology perspective, and shout out to Tyler as well, is more of that foundational, like, this is how we can operate all together and quickly. And we're building a system that's adaptable. And so as the coalition grows and the needs change, we're building flexibility into it. So it's not just a one-off event that we're building for. It's truly like, how do we build a network that is strong and a coalition that is able to communicate and has shared tools. I mean, one thing that we see is a lot of organizations are doing fantastic work, and we don't need every organization to have an individual event. I think one of William's big sayings is 10,000 groups of 10 people. It doesn't have much power, but if you get 10 groups of 10,000 people, there's a lot of power in that. And so that's what we're trying to work on and what we're building. So I do have a positive outlook on it. I think with the numbers that we are starting to get, and as we will continue to get, we will be able to push from a state perspective more so than we would have. The other opportunity I think that's really exciting in Wisconsin is we got new maps from a state perspective. So our state assembly is a hell of a lot more competitive than it's ever been, well, in the past 15 years. But we also have an opportunity to take the state senate in the upcoming election. And so I think this coalition can really push in a local district and in local seats, and be able to support candidates that we want to run, not just have a candidate that like is an establishment candidate. We will have some actual power on what we can do.
And I think this staying power goes, we mentioned Donald Trump won't be around forever. The same is true for Bernie Sanders. The infrastructure needs to be in place in these states for us to organize outside of that central figure. And I think if Wisconsin's able to do this, for all of you listening in on the call, you can do it in your state as well. Start to build a coalition of the like-minded organizations I know there are so many of them out there, but find that single issue that you have in common, start working around there. This is going to sound, perhaps bad, but you scratch their back as an organization, they'll scratch yours. Help each other out, support each other. That is solidarity in action. Start to build these networks and personal relationships of trusted individuals amongst like-minded orgs, and you can start to gain immense power very, very quickly. We will keep you posted on the progress that we have in Wisconsin, but we're going to jump to questions for Simon and Eric quick. I'm going to start with Tyler, and then we're going to get to the stack as I see hands raised. So Tyler, your question quick, but please try to keep it to about 30 seconds so that we can get through all the questions.
Absolutely. And everybody, can y'all hear me?
Yes, you're good.
Lovely.
Perfect. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. So my question, I'm just going to keep it really brief, but so my question will be mainly more centered around how do we continue to learn from the successes of this most recent election in Wisconsin Supreme Court, as well as also for the state educator, I believe it was for the school superintendent, or am I
Dr. Jill
correct?
Underlay,
Yes, getting that?
Yes.
Yes. So especially because, considering that Wisconsin also has that blend between like urban and rural counties and also townships and cities, like how do we then utilize that winning formula to then use as a template to then be able to, like, all right, we have the foundation, we can now work on fitting it for our state, for example, like Lucas with New York. Obviously, you have the difference between New York 1, and then you also have the district that represents where that's upstate New York near the Canadian border, so to speak, and that's like the huge divide that goes on for that state. How do we also like craft that message that shows that there isn't that much that really separates us between a rural community and an urban community, just perhaps how closely you live to your neighbors?
Simon, would you like to take that one, coming from Madison? You're in the more urban as Wisconsin gets, but obviously we have done a lot of messaging in rural Wisconsin too. Simon?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, I went through and did the shift analysis county to county in Wisconsin, and I specifically did this for CD1 and CD3, but across the state. And in my mind, it seems like the counties that shifted more dramatically were rural counties to Crawford. And so I think that points to, a couple of things. I think this was a turnout election that we won the turnout war. And that, frankly, Dane County, where I am, like 90-something% turnout in some districts. Like we're
93% Crawford.
Above but 94% Crawford, but also 90% voter turnout as compared to like presidential years. And that's crazy to think about in a Supreme Court election in April, with not much else on the ballot. And so it speaks to one, like the volunteers who knocked doors, like the organizing that happened just door to door, neighbor to neighbor, community to community was unbelievable for an April election. Two, I do think this is like you're getting some tailwinds of Elon Musk showing up in the state. And it should tell us, I think, as progressives, that billionaires are unpopular. Wow, shocking to everybody. But like the amount of people that are running their campaigns and have run their campaigns on billionaires are the worst. And we're not going to take their money. We're not going to associate with them. We're not going to organize with them. Like we had Reid Hoffman get involved in all sorts of races as a billionaire in many of the Democratic primaries. And as much as his money is useful, hitching our wagon to the billionaire class is a losing battle. And I think that's, to me, those are the lessons I'm taking away from this race. Especially in Dane County, like in the urban areas, the turnout machine was just humming, and we just got to continue to roll on that.
And Eric, from a more rural perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's if we talk about the issues that are important, people will come out. And I think rural areas do get left behind, and they have been left behind for quite a while from the Democratic Party. Um, and so I think it's showing value in like we are with you, and this is what we can fight for. Like healthcare, right? Like if you're in a rural community, there is no access to healthcare. You may have to drive an hour to get to a hospital. And if we are proposing a solution of like, no, we're going to make sure that there are community hospitals everywhere, and like we're going to build this system that makes sure everyone has access to healthcare and it's affordable or it's covered, like that's what people are sick of just surviving, I think, in a lot of regards. And that's what a lot of our rural communities are doing in Wisconsin.
Thanks, Eric. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm going to
Yeah.
jump to Hartzell quick because we do want to try to get through the stack. Hartzell? Hartzell, can you hear me?
I think you're muted.
How about now?
There you go.
Long
Gotcha.
time listener, first time caller. Before we get going for questions, I just want to say thanks to all of our guests, and also want to say thanks to all of our folks who are still with us. We had to do a little bit differently with the holiday and everything, and so I know we usually take questions during each speaker, but because of time and folks had to eat a little bit of dinner and stuff like that. So we're going to open up questions now. Let's keep it to about 30 to 45 seconds, and we're going to have everyone on the call. So we got Simon, we've got Eric, and we've got Lukas as well. But I do want to just make a flag and a note. Obviously, you just saw a lot of dudes on this call. And we also want to just note that there are a lot of folks who we're building coalition with, a lot of women, a lot of LGBTQ folks. I mean, all of our folks. And so I just want to apologize for not having a little bit more female representation. Kendall, thank you so much for championing this for us. But I just wanted to say that because you saw a lot of dudes who are doing a lot of good work, a lot of great women, a lot of good non-binary folks, a lot of our working class folks are doing good work. So that is my point. In fact, Carly just sent a message. A lot of our folks who have disabilities, ADA folks. I mean, doing what you can in your space in this moment is what's important. That's what's important. So with that, because I'm really bad at Zoom, Will, I'm going to have you monitor Stack for us. And
I see Michael on stack first.
Okay.
So
And those
Michael, I'm going to ask you to unmute real quick. And then please, if your question is for Lukas, please let us know right away. Direct your question to either Lukas, Simon, or Eric. And then try to keep your question to about 30 seconds, please.
Thanks, y'all. And who's up first? Will, take it away.
We have Michael Neal up first. Michael, I just asked you to unmute.
Got it. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. Well, so Lukas, I want to talk to you a little bit about, we just mentioned folks with disabilities here. How does that sort of connect in with your transit message for folks that need accessibility? We're talking a lot about the price of things, which is completely what we need to be talking about, but how do we get on the trains? How do we get on the transit in the first place for those of us that it's not so easy?
Right. That's a good question. I think they go hand in hand, right? I think accessibility needs to come with usability. You know what I mean? If you're going to expand transit options, those options need to be expanded for all people to be able to access. And I think that your question touches on something important that is oftentimes even, off the top of my head, right? We're talking about transit, and we're talking about the cost, right? Because the cost is something that is broadly speaking, but there are issues with transit that do pertain to, people like you're saying, for instance, with disabilities. So I think that's a good question. I think that, like I said, anything transit related that we do needs to have that have that come in with it, right? Like I think there's a lot of, even out on Long Island, there's a lot of I don't think the buses are very necessarily accessible. I don't think there are options for people, let's say that are in wheelchairs, for them to be able to come onto onto like a bus, for instance. I think there are a lot of buses are lacking in that regard. So I think any new bus, because of course it needs to be, in my opinion, new buses, new trains, like high speed rail, for instance. All of these things need to be built in like accessible, ready to go from the jump. It can't be something that you implement and then 6 months later you're realizing that there are problems with people that can't use the bus, can't use the train, and that all these things need to come in with the planning, right? We need to have all people as part of the calculation. And so like what you're saying is like it's very important to me. Like we need to make sure that, you know, if there's a bill, we're going to be funding these new types of buses, right? The bus needs to be, on one hand, it needs to be accessible for all people, wheelchair accessible for people with disabilities. Also, it needs to make sure that these bus routes are going into places that are underserved. You know what I mean? That, like you're saying, like we could talk about the cost all day, but if we get the cost down, but it's still not serving the community at large, whether those be people that are disabled or people that are underserved, then we still have issues. Like we want to make sure that there are no issues when we are trying to solve problems, that there are no issues that are arising from that. So I appreciate your question. I think it's very important to me as well.
Hey,
Thank you.
Lucas, real quick, because we didn't get a chance
Sure.
to ask you this in the interview, if you can keep it kind of
Mhm.
quick. Tell us about
Yeah.
your opponent real quick, if you don't mind.
Sure. My opponent is named Nick LaLota. He is a second-term congressman, Republican. There's nothing really special about him, to be honest. He's kind of just like an empty suit, you know, a corporate stooge. So this will be a short answer because there's really not much to say about him other than he just serves Wall Street dutifully, and he talks a big game about Main Street, but he doesn't really help working people at all.
Will, who's up next?
Thanks, Archel. So just a quick reminder as well, please keep your questions to 30 seconds. And then for our speakers as well, if you could keep your answer to 30 to 45 seconds, we're going to try to run through the stack here. We don't want to keep everybody. I'll be timing on the back end, and I'll give you a notification if we need to wrap up. Robert Copland, you've been asked to unmute. You have the floor, Robert.
This is to Lucas. What organizations have endorsed you? Because I've seen two good progressive Democrats here in my city lose because they got swamped by cash.
So far, Blue America PAC has endorsed us, which is led by Howie Klein, who's a great progressive activist. So that's right now the only organization that has endorsed us. But the money, the money thing, we're out here, we're looking for endorsements, but we're also, doing this in a grassroots way. So I don't think the money is necessarily always the end all be all. It is a lot of the message, but a lot of times your message can be swamped by money. And so I completely hear that. But, we're working, we're looking for endorsements also from local people. I'm having a fundraiser with some local clergy, some Greek American clergy out here to raise money from that community. So we're taking proactive steps to that end.
Thanks, Lucas. Next, we're going to go to Jim Langford. Jim, you've been asked to unmute, and you have the floor.
Yeah, hi, guys. This is for both Lucas and Eric. Guys, I'm probably the oldest member of the PDA staff that's sitting here. Unfortunately, but I do conduct interviews frequently for congressional candidates here in Florida for PDA. And so I'm going to ask both of you, first of all, do either of you have primary challenges, or are you assuming that you will be the nominee? First of all, Lucas?
I think someone is going to run. I'll just say the person who was the nominee for my district last time has been talking about running openly, but he hasn't made any moves to that end. So right now, I'm thinking maybe he'll jump in, but I'm growing a lot of local support, so I'm not necessarily too concerned about it.
Okay, and then Eric, how about you? Are you going to have a primary challenger?
So I am not running this cycle.
I see.
But I did help someone else launch their campaign for the third as a progressive against Rebecca Cook, who won the primary last time and is, I call her a Republican light Democrat. So
Right.
We're building a progressive force against her.
Okay. Well, here's the basis of my question. When I'm interviewing candidates for Congress here in Florida, one of the questions that we ask them is, from a progressive point of view, how do you convince the Democratic base, if you're running as a Democrat, that you are the right candidate, not your challenger, not your opponent, but how do you convince them that you are the right candidate to win the primary to go up against the Republican, whoever that might happen to be? So I guess, Lucas, that would come to you because Eric is not running.
Sure. I think it's a great question. And I think for a lot of people, I just tell them to contrast how I'm running versus how this other person is running. If that person, like I have a three kind of pronged approach, right? Tell me what you're going to do, tell me how you're going to do it, and tell me how you're going to fight people who want to stop you from doing what you want to do. And if you can't really articulate those things as I feel that I can, I think that's all the contrast that is really needed. What are the issues you're bringing up? Are you talking about unions? Are you talking about the cost of living? Or are you talking about, this like floozy MAGA stuff? Donald Trump is so mean, stuff like that. Like, are you really articulating a vision or not? If you think that person is articulating a better vision, I'll wait, because I don't necessarily think that person is, right? So I kind of just say, what is that person talking about? Are they talking about the same things? Are they telling you how they're going to do it, how they're going to fight? If not, then I'm your guy, because that's what I'm going to do.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. And then next on stack, I see Melissa Richardson Hall. Melissa, you've been asked to unmute and you have the floor.
Yes, thank you for having me. This one is for Lucas because he is running. What is your plan for, as a disabled advocate, what is your plan to bring back or fight for Section 504? Because it's been decimated by Donald Trump and everybody deserves the right to an education, no matter what their disability or whatever their challenge is.
Sorry, I'm muted. So I think this comes in with a lot. I mean, I think part of the plan needs to be awareness. I think that's not a question I've gotten before, quite honestly. And I think that's a good thing, because you're raising a very important issue. You're raising a salience of just like civil rights. You know what I mean? And I think that as Democrats, our message needs to be focused on these certain things as well, like alarming people that, like this specific community, right? The disabled community, they're under attack in this number of ways. And part of how we do it is just raising awareness to people so that they realize like it is that much more important to vote for this reason and that reason, really letting people know how many different things are under attack. And then, as I answered a question earlier, is making sure that we recruit candidates and that we have candidates who are actually going to fight for that, who actually find that to be important. And, it doesn't have to be, find a candidate who has a family member who's disabled or anything like that, or who's personally also disabled, or who understands that compassion. It just needs to be a person who understands and is compassionate and will say, I'm going to fight for this end, right? I want to bring back Section 504, and here's how we're going to do it, right? I'm going to introduce a bill with these co-sponsors, and we're going to say that, we're going to go and we're going to fight these different Congress people who are fighting it, because there's no necessarily reason to fight against that, or to fight for those things not to be re-implemented or beefed back up. Because like I said, like you said, Trump is really just taking a sledgehammer to everything. Okay. And I'm taking too long. So I will just say that, like I said, finding people who actually understand the salience of it and talk about it and remind people that it's important to vote.
All right, and thank you for your question, Melissa. Next, we have Rick LaMonaco. Rick, you have been asked to unmute, and you have the floor.
I just want to thank all you guys in the Young Democratic PDA, particularly Hartzell and Walker, and the stuff that you are doing amazes me. And I wish I was 40 years younger. But I would like Hartzell, if he possibly can, to either post that speech that he gave near the beginning, or give a link to whoever it came from. It was wonderful. And thank all you guys in Wisconsin, and particularly Missouri, because we're so backward compared to you with trying to overcome MAGA. So you guys keep me motivated. Thank you all.
My brother, I'm going to do you one even better. I'm going to post the video that's even got music behind it as well.
And remember as well, Wisconsin was in a very bad place in 2010. Scott Walker was the governor. We just elected Ron Johnson to the Senate. The Tea Party movement was starting. Act 10 was passed. This progress was made because of a lot of hard work, and that can be duplicated in Missouri. That can be duplicated across the country. So next, I see Lisa White on the stack. Lisa, you've been asked to unmute, and you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. I have a friend with me right now. We have two questions and we're trying to be really fast. Jackie Larson has asked, with a Justice Department that is currently owned by Trump, Musk, and what are viable actions we can take when tackling justice and rule of law violations? And then I have another question after that. What can we do as citizens to support politicians who are standing up to Trump? Is there a list of brave opponents on our behalf we can support?
Well,
and Lisa, who is your question directed towards?
Well, I think honestly, I think
Maybe
that's
the
for
ones
your
to answer that
coalition.
one.
Yeah, your coalition, I think, will be great for that, Will.
All right, Simon, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this first. I don't have a list for you, and I hope that somebody is out there compiling one. That would be a valuable resource, I think. But I don't think politicians are going to be the ones that stop this stuff. If I'm being totally honest with you, I think the best way, we saw this in a couple of places, but the immigration rights group in your community is probably doing Know Your Rights trainings. If you're in a workplace, for example, if you are in a community and you have neighbors who are immigrants or migrants or community members that just are not white, because they might be targeted too. Community members that are speaking out on issues like Palestine, they're folks that might be targeted too. Go to a Know Your Rights training. So Know Your Rights trainings include information on what to do if you're stopped, what to do if your neighbor is stopped, what to do if you see ICE agents in your community, things like that. Super important. In terms of Justice Department stuff, look, I think it's going to mean like building a community network of solidarity that the minute somebody, there's a knock on somebody's door in your community, the whole neighborhood knows about it. Every person in your network knows about it. Every organization in your community knows about it. So I think the defense here is not going to come from elected officials. It can, and there's ways that elected officials can stand up and do more. But at this point, I think we should be looking at joining community organizations that can defend us against some of these attacks, particularly immigrant rights groups that are doing Know Your Rights trainings already. That's the place I would plug in immediately. In terms of the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition, I think we're also, we're looking at rapid response networks and the opportunity of building an organizational rapid response network in Wisconsin and connecting to existing networks of rapid response in the state, because there are some. I think that like on an institutional perspective, if organizations have rapid response networks where they can mobilize and walk out in solidarity and pick fights in the public as a coalition, that's another way that we can exercise power there without relying on elected officials to pull some miracle out of their hat, or courts to pretend like they're going to do something when they can't enforce the things that they're going to do because the Trump administration is in open defiance of court orders already.
That was a great answer in regards to rapid response, Simon. That was going to be my exact suggestion. When something happens, you need to have a way to blast it out immediately so that everybody in the community knows, which means building a network of contacts that have access to immediate contact information, whether it's email, text messages, signal, have this foundation in place so that when a community member needs assistance, hundreds, if not thousands of other community members are immediately aware and they're able to show up and stand up in solidarity with whoever needs the assistance.
Phone trees are still so important.
That's a word I haven't thought of in a long time, Hartzell, but yes, actually, that's a very good idea, utilizing phone trees as well. So thank you for your question, Lisa. Next, I see James Cameron Steinman on stack. James, you've been asked to unmute and you have the floor.
Okay, first of all, am I coming through?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. So this question is for Simon. At one point, you mentioned in implementing hard to dodge queries and challenges for both Dem and I'm sorry. Could I send my question to you through text? I'm having a difficult time with
Sure. If you want to message it to me or directly to Simon, and I can copy and paste it for him and get you an answer. So
yes, please.
Perfect. Okay. Next on the stack, I see Mickey Leader. Mickey, you've been asked to unmute, and you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. Okay, so my hope is tremendous hearing you young people talk. and I want to congratulate you. I just want to draw attention that you were talking about two people running in New York. New York 17 is a hot race, and Beth Davidson is a wonderful young woman running. It's Mike Lawler's seat. It's his district. And if anybody has any doubts of who he is, he's getting a lot of national attention because they're surmising he's going to run for governor of New York. So pay attention. You all need to work together, share all your strengths and all your strategies. More and more, I'm hearing people saying that they fear that Trump will stop elections. So I want to draw one question to all of you. What are you doing to make sure that we are fighting to keep the laws that are changing and what the GOP is doing, that women who are married, have a married name, they can't go and vote anymore because they have to have identification that's on their birth certificate. And yes, people say, oh, go get a passport. Passports are expensive. And a lot of people won't even know they have to do that. That's one thing. And we've talked about that here in the past, but I don't think a lot of attention is being given in the grassroots. We all have to do that. And lastly, the elephant in the living room is really everybody must, all of you, every one of you have to have the same huge messaging that all of these cuts and job losses and firings and reductions and all of the environmental stuff they're killing, it's all to give the GOP, the billionaire and corporations, trillions of dollars in tax cuts. Stop the cuts. Stop the cuts because it's hurting you. The cuts is, giving all that money to the billionaires, and you can't buy medicine. You can't get.
Thank you, Mickey. We gotta keep the questions to about 30 seconds. But
Oh,
go
no,
ahead,
no.
Ursula.
And also, I just want to say, Kendall, if you are on the call still, Kendall, I think that would be a great person to answer Mickey's question. Kendall, you still on?
I am. I guess I'm trying
I'll
to find
summarize it.
what
Yeah,
the specific question in that is, because I
Yeah,
agree with frustration. I identify with the frustration and the confusion and the feeling of helplessness as we sit by and watch all this happen. And I wish I had a very straightforward answer to it. And I think that
well, let me phrase it a little bit better, and I don't want to. The intersectionality. So bringing in, this isn't a women's issue. This isn't a dude's issue. This is intersectionality in this moment, with making sure we all work together to highlight the issues that are closest to us, but also showing how connected they are. What do you think of that?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think part of the answer to this question lies in how you just phrased it, is that there is so much that is happening and developing at a rapid pace that it's hard to even keep up with all of the things that the Trump administration is trying to strip away. And that's part of their game plan, is to do as much as possible, as quickly as possible, so that there isn't even enough time to organize a direct and strong response to it. So I think that part of our individual duties as progressives and as Americans is to understand the issues that affect us most directly, and to be able to speak to those issues with people who are also going to be affected by it. And we can't assume that our elected officials are the only ones who are going to be able to speak truth to power to these things, because if we have in all honesty, not as many representatives as there are issues to speak about. So yeah, I as a woman, that obviously does concern me greatly. And I think that just staying on top of the issues, speaking to the people in your life to make sure that they understand what's going on, all that does is just build a growing base of people who are hopefully going to write to their senators about this, who are going to show up to protests about this, who are going to make sure that these issues are not lost in the fray of all of the massive things going on, because it's very easy to just say, well, they're trying to dismantle democracy, but we can't let the specific ways that they're trying to do it just sort of get thrown into the mix and not be addressed specifically. So yes.
That wasn't my question. My question was more a desire to have everybody come on the same message. I don't care what our heartfelt individual concerns are, all of them, but it's the messaging. People just don't connect that dot. They're cutting all that crap. because they're giving the trillions of dollars of tax cuts. Stop the cuts.
Yeah, well, Kendall, what do you think about that? Just real quick, just in a couple words, the message of it all. What do you think could unite us? What is that? In a few words, what could be that North Star?
Well, the thing that I feel everything boils down to is the issue of special interests and money in politics subverting the will of the people. So really nothing that we want passed, nothing that progressives can fight for, nothing that progressives are trying to fight against will be achieved if our voices are drowned out by the money that is constantly being shoved at these politicians and the special interest groups that are constantly paying off these politicians to ignore what we're talking about. So we can stand on moral high ground as long as we want to, but if there's massive amounts of money that is being funneled into the system, our voices are going to be lost no matter what. So the rallying cry behind every issue that we want to achieve has to be getting money out of politics and getting corrupt politicians out of office. And if the way to do that is by dismantling and overturning court cases that have allowed this to occur, then that has to be what we are constantly unyielding about.
All right. Thank you, Kendall. I'm going to remind everyone, please, questions and answers to 30 seconds or less. We got to get through the stack. So, Simon, I have our question from James from before. At one point, you talked about issuing difficult to dodge yes/no questions for both Democratic and Republican candidates over whether they oppose billionaire influence in politics and elections. One concern James has is with if this is about candidates that are not concerned about re-election, possibly due to the abundance of lobbying, it seems there's little to keep them from merely saying they oppose it and simply supporting it down the road. The question is then, how do we force them to talk the talk instead of, how do we force them to walk the walk instead of simply talking the talk?
There's something that's been kind of circling around in progressive communities, and I'm not sure it's been done systematically. But I think the idea of having sort of eyes on the ground, people who are just relentlessly following these folks in district, having a few people, whether it's like one really obsessive person who has every news alert that has the name of a legislator, that stuff has real value if you're communicating that to organizers in your community, particularly like, you know, my ears on the ground in Congressional District 1 or Congressional District 3 kind of during this recess period are hopefully going to allow us to track the movements of the two legislators. And if they're showing up at events like I just got a message that Ron Johnson, our senator in Wisconsin, is showing up at an event on May 3rd. And it allows us to organize actions and really put pressure on those folks in those moments. Having people who are tracking both the votes and the actions of our legislators are absolutely vital. And that level of like citizen journalism is now accessible given the information out there. So I would say just get on them. Like, yeah, wear them out. And then make sure that you're communicating in your networks and to the organizers in your district or your community what those representatives are doing. No secret that politicians are going to lie, and they're going to lie more if they feel they're more confident and more comfortable in their situation. So I'll stop there. I think that's the solution that I see.
Thanks, Simon. So next on the stack, I see Carly. Carly, you've been asked to unmute. You have the floor. Try to keep your question to 30 seconds or less, please.
Okay, as a Jewish woman with a disability, I'm autistic. How are we supposed to combat RFK's anti-autism rhetoric? That's the big thing for me.
And is your question directed towards Lukas or
All
Simon?
of you.
Would anybody like to take this specifically?
I mean, I definitely answer your question. The way we combat it is by not making like jokes about it. I think, you know, like people, it's sort of like, you know, I forgot exactly what he said about that autistic people can't do this, that, or the other, which of course is complete bullshit. But I think the one thing we don't do is just take it callously and say like, oh, this is just RFK, this is the brainworm guy, whatever. Like, because I think
turn on dining room.
I think, you know, memes and jokes are fine, but after a certain point, it's like, no, this is a person with real power. I think this is a person who every time he opens his mouth, he does real damage to every group that he talks about. And I think that just, you know, it kind of, you know, sometimes when I answer this question, it's like, how do we combat it? And it's just like, we need to just talk about it and raise awareness. And sometimes it's just like, that doesn't feel necessarily adequate. But the more people that are in tune to the fact that, you know, this guy is just blatantly like he's just like I don't know exactly what the word is, but he's just like anti-autistic person. Like he's very bigoted, clearly against people. He obviously has a problem. He thinks it's an issue if you're autistic. He's been on record saying that it's an issue, that it's so bad. And I think, thank you. No, I know the term is ableist, but I didn't know specifically for autism. But what I'm saying is, yeah, he is being ableist. And I don't want to take too long, but basically, like, we need to come out and say, like, this guy is a bigot. Don't listen to anything to, what he's saying, and organize to that end and make sure that this group is protected and knows that they are protected.
That's a good point, Lucas. Treat it much like we do when Donald Trump says ridiculous things. Some people, like to laugh it off and pretend like it's a joke. It's not a joke. These are people in real positions of power that are saying immensely harmful and, as Lucas just stated, absolute bullshit things. And we need to treat it like the serious issue that it is. So next we see on the stack, I see Steve. Steve, you've been asked to unmute. You have the floor.
Thank you. I agree with the guys in Wisconsin on these issues they've raised. Good for them. But I think they have to address the silent elephant in the room, which is racism. The reason why white working class people are voting Republican and for Trump is because he's an out and out racist. And I think you need to confront that, and you need to say explicitly to white working class people that you agree they have rights and they do deserve dignity and respect. And if you don't say that, you're going to allow the Republicans to continue to steal these votes.
Thank you, Steve. We did have a pretty significant issue, particularly in the 2022 election, with Republicans and essentially race baiting around Mandela Barnes's campaign, which is unfortunate because he ran a great campaign and was very close. Did you have a question, or did you want to make that point?
I want to make that point. I argue with good-meaning white people all the time who want to deny that racism is the issue. But if you look at what's going on, is Trump addressing lowering prices? No. Is he doing all these things that are racist? Yes. So what's the issue here? It's not lower prices, it's racism.
Thank you, Steve. And in Wisconsin, that is definitely still an issue that we are facing. We're trying to work towards solutions as quickly as we can. Next, I see on the stack, Mike Fox. Mike, you have the floor.
Yes, just very quickly. My brother's gotten a coalition sign on if we have a link. How does Progressive Democrats of America sign on to that coalition that you're building up there?
Simon?
Yeah, so what we're trying to do, Mike, and to be really clear, is a Wisconsin coalition. So cool. I want to be crystal clear. And the sign-on will involve, like, I mean, a Wisconsin base of organizing, folks in Wisconsin, membership in Wisconsin. And so the Progressive Democrats of America Wisconsin chapter wants to sign on. We got a letter for you, Mike. We can send that around, and William has all this stuff. And so
cool. Thanks, that's all I need.
Yep, Wisconsin focused.
Thanks, Mike. Next on the stack, I have Nina. Nina, you have been asked to unmute, and you have the floor.
Got it. Hang on. I'm trying.
Nina, you're still muted?
Yeah. Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thanks for having me. This is Nina in Florida. Question for anybody, mostly for Lucas. What is your stance, knowing I'm from Connecticut originally, but knowing the college campuses, I'm trying to separate Nassau from Suffolk County. What is your stance on bringing more young people, those who supported Trump in 2024, into the coalition, knowing there are college campuses out there, as well as any contacts that you might have made either with David Hogg, DNC chair, and or Maxwell Frost, who's willing to go out there and support any new candidate?
I don't have any personal connection with either Hogg or Frost, but in terms of the college campuses, Stony Brook is the big college out in Suffolk, out in my district, and I think a problem for us has been that we don't show up to that campus at all for any sort of organizing, and there's a lot of I know for a fact, because I've been connecting with a bunch of professors that work at Stony Brook, and there is a lot of interest within the staff to facilitate events and to facilitate things on campus to get people excited, to get young people excited about fighting oligarchy and showing that it's pertinent to their lives. I think that we haven't done that. We really just have seemingly been afraid of showing up and hearing the concerns of young people. And so I think the main thing that we really need to do is just show up and walk the walk, and instead of just talking the talk. And so I plan on doing that. I plan on showing up to Stony Brook and other places like that to galvanize support.
Excellent. Thanks, Lucas. Next on the stack is Robert. Robert, you have the floor. You've been asked to unmute.
Great. Thank you very much. As somebody originally from Kenosha, Wisconsin, I want to tell you how heartwarming it is to see positive activity again. I contributed and had lots of friends who contributed to Susan Crawford's campaign, and it's absolutely thrilling. I've been in Wisconsin during the recall for the former governor and all of that. I still have friends in Kenosha, and I'd like to know if you guys can supply me with a link or information that I can share with them, because they're very much anti-Trump, but I don't know that they're hooked into any of the progressive networks. One is a fellow who's actually county supervisor in Kenosha County. But these guys, these men and women are interested in supporting progressive candidates, and especially turning around the Kenosha County, et cetera, district for Congress.
Yeah, Robert, I just dropped in the chat a link. This is for Wisconsinites. Please don't fill this out, everybody on the call, unless you're in Wisconsin. But Robert, this is a link to a petition to vote no on Trump's budget cuts. This is a Wisconsin-focused petition that you can share with your friends. And we'll, Working Families Party, Working Families Power is hosting this petition, and we're going to work closely with them on this effort statewide. But yeah, all this will help people get looped into the list, and we'll be able to share stuff there as well.
Right.
That's
yeah. Go ahead.
That's what I would do.
I'll pass this. All right, great. I'll put it on my Facebook where some of them follow, and I'll send emails to my friends in Wisconsin. Thank you very much, and keep fighting the good fight, folks.
Thanks, Robert. And then Robert, also don't be afraid to direct them towards our Wisconsin Revolution. Obviously, I'm the executive director there. Eric is the deputy director, and we're working very closely with Simon, so we can get any of those people into the loop here. So thanks, Robert. Next on the stack, I see Michael. Michael, you've been asked to unmute. You have the floor.
Yeah, it's really good. I just have a couple quick comments. It's really good to see young guys. I went to Jimmy Gomez's town hall yesterday in LA, and I didn't see enough young people. Another quick comment here. If you go to Open Secrets, it shows who contributes to people's campaign. And Nick Leota got money from New York Cancer and Blood Specialists, $50,000 from Blackstone Group, or $43,000 Blackstone Group. It's a private equity. Elliott Management, $20,000. So it's a really good site to go to. I made some contributions up in Alaska, and that came through. So I'm glad to see you running against them. And did you link us to your campaign? And can we start making cold calls? Did you just have to win the primary up there? I'm sorry I missed the first part of your introduction there. And how can we get involved?
No worries.
Lucas, take it away.
Yeah. So right now there's no primary.
Okay.
That's subject to change, I believe. But in terms of how you can get involved, I dropped my email in the chat. I can put the email back again. I'll put my my website, ActBlue, everything. I'll redrop that back in the chat. I would love, if you want to help out, shoot me an email. We can definitely set something up. I'm happy for anyone to volunteer. I appreciate it. I'll take all the help I could get. So hopefully that answers your question. I could drop all that stuff in the chat for you to take a look at, and you and I could connect on the side.
Sure. Thanks for running. It's good to see young people.
Of course. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Next on the stack is Nola. Nola, you have been asked to unmute, and you have the floor. Nola, can you hear me? Okay,
Yes.
we're going to put... Oh, there we go. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, this is a general question, not particular progressive Democrats, but how an organization appears is the face of the public. Mobilize has a quirk. There is a letter writing campaign dealing with Supreme Court. and they show you a map from God knows when, and you ask and to know where it is. Come on, not all of us are able to drive cars. I don't think it's much to ask knowing what city this in-person event is. Thank you. And what can we do to change it? Thank you.
Thanks, Nola. Unfortunately, I can't answer that because we are not with Mobilize. That would be a question for Mobilize themselves. That I don't know if Mobilize is a company or if it's just an app itself hosted by another larger company. Unfortunately, that's something I can pass on to Alan, and maybe Alan will have a contact with them. I'm not sure, but I know most obviously most of these apps are built just to try to get as much information as out as possible in a centralized location. So I agree, there are significant improvements that could and should be made. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to do so. So thank you for your question. Next, we're going to go to Peter. Peter, you've been asked to unmute and you have the floor.
Hello, I have a brief question. Regarding billionaires or other wealthy contributors, I've heard that PDA needs to build up a legal fund. Do you also need to build up a legal fund?
So on our end, we are not approaching, excuse me, that is a necessity at this point. I think Mike Fox, that might be a good answer for you, Mike, because I can't speak to what you guys are doing. Are you still with us, Mike?
Well, I can also, as Mike has the actual numbers, so I know Mike will have all of the bells and whistles and the I's and T's crossed and everything. I remember what Alan did say last week and the last couple of weeks on this call. With everything that is going on, we want to also be able to act in solidarity, but also be self-sustaining. So that is absolutely something that we're thinking about, and it's something that we're working on. And Mike Fox, if you have any other details to add.
Yeah, it's beyond thinking.
Yeah, there he is.
So the quick answer, yes. Thank you, Dr. Deutsch.
I can do something maybe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deutsch. And to answer the first part of your question, from Wisconsin, at least, we are not concerned about that at this point in time. But obviously that potentially could change going forward. I'm not thinking about it. I'm more thinking about getting our operational structure in place more so than anything. So next on the stack, we have Carmen. Carmen, you've been asked to unmute and you have the floor.
Okay. This question is either for you, William Walter, or the PD America guy in Florida. I know it's going backwards and then we need to try to look forward, but what if anything could have been done in terms of Josh Weil? I was really, really hoping that he would be able to win that congressional seat.
I see Mike waving his hand, so I'm going to let Mike take this as Mr. Florida here.
Okay.
Yeah, all good. And Carmen, let's you and I just take this offline. Big long off topic question, but I hear you. And email me at mikefox@pdamerica.org and I'll get you an answer. Okay.
Okay.
But I think, Mike, real quick, can you say that confidently? Like, I mean, we didn't bring it home, but I'm encouraged by the numbers that we got. You tell me.
Oh, no question. It was a victory. See, this is not a short thing. There is no question that it was a victory to the tune of 17-point flip. End of conversation. But then we'll take this offline.
Thanks, Mike. And for our final question, so we're going to close the stack right now, but Hassini, I hope I pronounced that correctly. If not, I apologize. You've been asked to unmute and you now have the floor.
So I have a question for Lukas. So like, what's your advice to young people that want to get involved with any political position?
Involved in terms of like helping out on a campaign or even running or just in general, just getting involved in politics kind of thing? That's a sort of a follow-up question.
I'll ask to unmute again.
Just like getting involved with politics in general.
So I would say, honestly, and I'll elaborate, but when I say like go for it, I mean like quite literally go for it. I got involved while I was in college a little bit, where I just started working on campaigns. I applied to be an intern in some places. I volunteered in some places when I handed out flyers and other, just doing little by little, building up connections with people so that, you know, at some point I was invited to join a local Democratic committee. And that was after I was showing up places and I was showing people like, you know, I want to get involved, whatever. You know, what I really did is just like send emails out to as many people as you can, you know, get on people's radar, say, you know, this is who I am. This is how I want to help. Like, you know, I'll do anything. Like really just what I did was, because I was nervous to do this at first because I was always like a very shy person, like when I was a lot younger, and I would kind of just put that to the side and was like, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to email as many people as possible. Not everyone's going to get back to you, and that's not a fixture of you not being good enough to do anything, or you not being worth people's time. Sometimes people don't see it, or they don't necessarily always see the value in a young person who really wants to do something, but people will see that. Trust me, they'll see that you have a lot of energy, and like they'll sort of bring you into the fold, and then you'll start getting involved, and you'll honestly be surprised how like a year or two after you start doing that, like where you'll be, the things you'll have done, like, you know what I mean? Like it, like really, if you fully apply yourself, like no stress, no pressure, no ego, nothing, and you just say like, I'll pick up garbage, I'll start doing that, I don't care what it is, like you will be brought into the fold, because people really do like young people getting involved, and so I don't want to run on forever, but like really just put yourself out there and don't be afraid, and like that's the best advice I could give you.
That's a fabulous answer, Lucas, and exactly what I would have said. With my local county party, they are so excited to have somebody under the age of 60 show up that they will ask me to do anything they can. They will tell me about events they have going on. They're basically begging me to take more of a leadership role just because they're so happy to have my voice there. So I wanted to give a huge thank you to Lukas Ventouras for coming today, and a huge thank you to Simon Rosenblum-Larson for coming to talk about the Fighting Oligarchy Coalition. As you can see, we do have young people getting engaged and involved across the country, but it's not enough. We need more young people. Talk to your children, talk to your grandchildren, talk to your cousins, your nieces, your nephews, anybody in your circle. Make sure they understand the importance of electoral politics and how this is our future. We need to be able to drive it forward because it's not going to drive itself forward. And power does not beget anything without a demand. So that is our job as young people. We're going to demand the future that we want to see, and we're going to keep pushing forward every single day. Thank you so much for joining us today, gentlemen, and I will pass it back to Mr. Hartzell-Gray.
I thought this was a great town hall, and I know, it is a holiday. Again, thank you to our brothers and sisters who joined us on Easter, our brothers and sisters who have joined us on what I believe was the last day of Passover. I said at the start of the show, it's an honor to build power. It's an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to build power with each and every one of you. Like Will said, thank you to our guests, but also I want to say thanks to Will and to Kendall and to Tyler. Like I said earlier, y'all, we didn't expect this to be a YPDA show, but it kind of ended that way, and I'm actually really happy that we did that, to be honest with you. Young people is not a hypothetical or a construct. We are just people, just like you and all of your family, and we all want the same thing, and that's just to be looked at, to be heard, and to be taken care of, because that's what our government is here for. And before we get to family time, Mike Fox, I'm gonna give it back to you for family time, because I got to go do my family time for Easter. I got asked a couple more times to read this last thing. We read it earlier, again, just that the manifesto for solidarity and for freedom. And this is what it goes by, and I'll send it to Mike Fox after this. My friends, remember this: freedom is a pure idea. It occurs spontaneously and without instruction. Random acts of insurrection that are occurring constantly throughout the galaxy or throughout the country. There are whole armies, battalions that have no idea they've already enlisted in the cause. My friends, we're in the cause, and we're in the trenches, 10 toes deep in the trenches. Remember that the frontier of rebellion is everywhere, and even the smallest act of insurrection pushes our lines forward. Remember this: the imperial need, the oligarchic, the Trump need, the Elon Musk need, the billionaire needs for control is so desperate because it is so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. It breaks, it leaks. Authority is brittle, folks. Oppression is the mask of fear. And remember that, and know this: the day will come when all the skirmishes and the battles, that these moments of defiance will have flooded the banks of the empire, flooded the banks of the oligarchs, flooded the banks of the big moneyed interests, their authority. It will break that authority, and then there will be one too many. One single thing will break the siege. We will break the siege. Remember this. PDA, remember this. Try. We are here to try. We're here to win. And I feel so much better today, right now, than I even did 2 hours ago when we got on this call. So appreciate you all. Don't agonize, don't cry, organize. That's why we are here. And that's why I'm happy to be surrounded with the best folks in the world, each and every one of you. So Mike Fox, let's do some family time. And I'm going to go eat some deviled eggs or something.